Hey everyone, this is Lettie. I'm back with my wedding and event podcast. Thus far, we've talked about selecting your venue and how important that is. I've had Christina Helm Price here as a florist. So we talked about the florist industry and preparing for an event or wedding. And I've also had Christine Leatherman from Flourish Cakery here to talk about the cakes and the desserts that you do with events and weddings and all the ins and out with that. And today I'm back, just me today, but we're going to talk about wedding coordination and what all goes into play with wedding coordination, which is a lot. So you might want to put your earphones in, go on a jog, or make some food because I got a lot of information to give on this. First of all, a lot of people ask, maybe what does a wedding coordinator do or an event coordinator? Is it needed? Is it not needed? And so I'm just going to get into all those details today. First of all, a wedding coordinator needs to be a person with experience. So I've done wedding coordinating, event coordinating now for 10 years. And like I said at the beginning when I started, I really didn't have experience in it, but my previous career was a lot of organization, timelines, itineraries, managing people as I was a college coach and also administrator at some point. So it kind of translated into wedding coordinating. And of course, when I first started, there are trials and tribulations, do's and don'ts, and things that I learned that I most certainly have put into play. But with 10 years experience, I've certainly learned a lot. And so I just want to share those things with you. A lot of people ask, is a wedding coordinator needed? And I will tell you, yes, it's very essential. There's a lot that goes into the day with the timeline. A lot of people that I experience with have never been to a wedding before, never been in a wedding. So they have no clue what they're supposed to do. And there are some things in the old traditional ways we think of weddings, which don't necessarily have to happen today, but there are some formalities that go into planning and things that have to happen so that the ceremony flows correctly, the reception and all that, which I'm going to get into. So first thing you need to know, what I talked about, is your venue. Some venues provide a coordinator. Some venues don't provide a coordinator, as it's a turnkey operation. They tell you what time to be there. They give you the key and say, have at it and be out of here by this time. So they're certainly not going to provide a coordinator. A venue that's a little bit more detailed, they're probably going to provide a coordinator. But what does that coordinator do? Are they just there to kind of show you where things are in the facility when you need that and then they leave? Or are they there for an extended amount of time that you're at the facility and they're helping you with all these things that I'm going to talk about? So again, they might provide one. You might decide that you want to provide one. And of course, this comes with, does this fit in your budget? So we all have different budgets. Nothing wrong with that. Everybody's on a different scale. So you need to look at the cost of what a wedding coordinator might be. A coordinator can range from anywhere from $700, which is very, very minimal, the whole way to $10,000, which is they're doing a lot of stuff for you. And if you can't, if that doesn't seem right to you, then you certainly can designate somebody. Maybe it's a close family friend, an acquaintance with your family. Maybe it's a family member, which I don't recommend because they're probably going to be a part of something, but it needs to be a distant family if you choose to do that. But you want to designate somebody if you decide to go that route, somebody that's organized, very detailed, and somebody who can handle quick tasks and quick adjustments, has to modify, adapt, and somebody that can honestly manage people. So when you're thinking of that person, like I said, if you can't hire somebody, that's kind of the criteria you need to go through with that individual. If you hire somebody, you really want to sit down and be thoughtful. It's like selecting a venue. You want to be thoughtful on who you select. What does this coordinator do? I do know there's a lot of people out there that claim themselves as coordinators, and I would not say that they're coordinators. A true coordinator is going to do pretty much everything for you. So why do you need a wedding coordinator? Many reasons. The flow of the day. So how early does the day start? You know, for females, sometimes they're getting their hair and their makeup done in a facility. That needs to be on a time schedule. If you have 8 to 10 girls, it takes a while. It's 30 minutes or more just to get hair done, 30 minutes or more to get makeup done. So you have that many people, the day is going to go by very, very quickly. So you need to have an organized timeline of who's going, who's getting makeup now, who's getting hair done. Then we're switching, or have a timeline for your girls so they know what time they're going and hopefully the day can flow. Also, the wedding coordinator I know at my facility, I check in on the hair and makeup artist. Are they okay? How are we doing on time? Hey, we're running a little bit behind. We're going to need to pick up the pace, or, is that available? Or just letting them know, because they're into what they do and they're an artist and they're doing design on the face and design on the hair, and you get into that and sometimes you can lose sight of time. So it's very helpful just to keep everybody on time with that. So that's the first thing as the day starts on. Then as the day moves on, the florist is probably going to come and deliver flowers. Well, you have bridesmaids bouquets. You're going to have boutonnieres for the men. You might have grandparents flowers, which I think Christina and I talked about how that is very important and just a nice thing to add, a touch, because your grandparents are very important and they're going to be a part of your ceremony. Who's going to operate and handle those flowers? Where do they go? Where do they sit? So they're not being knocked over. The girls' flowers are in water. We got to get to them easily when it's time to take pictures when the photographer arrives. Who's going to put the boutonnieres on the suits or the shirts or the vests for the guys? That's not a photographer's job. They don't get there and want to have to do all this stuff. They don't plan that into their day. Also, when grandparents arrive, which I'll get to in a little bit, but it's probably me later, who's attaching their flowers? So things like that. And also when the photographer arrives, the details should already be set out and ready to go. They shouldn't be asking you, okay, where are your rings? Where are your vow books? Did you bring an invitation with you? Can I use some flowers that are in your color scheme? So all these things should already be compiled. Your wedding coordinator, as soon as the photographer arrives, should say, listen, I have all the details set out for you. Here's where all this is. This is all their items. And when you're done with them, let me know so that they can get them to the right places. Jewelry, so when the bride gets dressed, we know exactly where it is. Maybe it's the guy's shoes and his cologne and maybe a watch that he's wearing. We got to get that to them so they can then put that on. If you're going to stage the suits, if you're going to stage the dresses, are they steamed? I can tell you probably about 98% of the time when I get to my dresses, my suits, and I'm staging everything in the morning, way early in the morning, I steam all the time. I steam everybody's dresses. That fabric they make today, it's beautiful, but it sure does wrinkle. So is somebody doing that? When the photographer gets there, the photographer is not going to have time to steam. A bridesmaid has her hair done, makeup done. It's about time to get dressed. And she says, oh my gosh, my dress is all wrinkled. So who's doing that? So a lot goes into just planning as the day flows. Also, if it's an extra hot day, how are we going to handle it? Like today is extremely hot outside. If I was having a wedding today, I would be coordinating, hey, we're going to go out and take pictures for this amount of time with the photographer. We need to get them back in to get them cooled off. I'd have water prepared for them because dehydration is a real thing. And these hot days, you are going to sweat. So there's situations like that that occur. If it's a rainy day, who's laying down a clear mat so the bride can stand on it so her dress isn't getting wet, not getting mud on it, not getting grass, all those things. But a coordinator has to be there to do that. And I'm sorry, but your mom, your dad, your maid of honor, your grandmother, grandfather, all these people that are a part of your special day and in your ceremony, they don't have time to do these things. Everybody thinks they do, and they don't. And it creates serious anxiety, more stress, disagreements. And this is a special day and a special moment. This is not a time where we want to have a disagreement, anxiety. It's already emotional as is, and extra stress because, again, it's already emotional and special. Also, if your venue has a coordinator on site, they're probably going to meet with your vendors. Vendors have to have support when they arrive. It can't be, you don't want it to be sight unseen. So, for instance, I'm the coordinator at my venue, my establishment, and if I have a vendor I've never had at my establishment before, then I have them come meet with me way ahead of time. Caterer can see my kitchen. They know where our dumpster is. They know how we flow, how we pick up plates, where this is, where that is. So when they get their day of, they know that I have an ice machine. They don't have to bring extra ice. All these other things they don't have to do. DJs or musicians, where do they plug up? Where are they going to be staged? Is the ceremony in a different location from the reception? Do they need a table? Do they not need a table? So it's very nice to have somebody meet with them ahead of time. If that's not the case, when the coordinator gets there with the vendor, They can make sure that everything is done exactly how it needs to be done. They have all its need. Everybody's on the same time frame, and that we're all flowing in the same timeline. Sometimes on a hot day, like I said, it's today while we're doing this, it's extremely hot. Well, if a cake arrives and it's kind of an outdoor venue, certainly the coordinator is going to have to set that cake up at a later time, maybe different from their normal time because of the heat. So these are all things that a coordinator is going to do. And as you're thinking about these things when I'm talking about this, it kind of makes sense. Somebody else isn't going to be able to run and do this when you have 50 other things to do, pictures to take, staging to do, and get ready and get in line for your ceremony. It's going to be very difficult for somebody in the bridal party or your mom or dad or somebody to do that, including you. If you're the bride, it's not going to be easy for you to have time to do that. Another thing for a wedding coordinator is rehearsal practice. So rehearsal practice are definitely needed. And if you don't have anybody organizing, I have found that it just becomes an extreme disaster, cluster, and nothing is on time. I have personally been to some weddings where the wedding's supposed to start at 4 o'clock and we're still sitting there at 4:30, like, what's going on? Is everybody okay? What's happening? And I can guarantee you 100% of the time it's because they don't have anybody organizing them, getting them in plan, or they didn't even do a rehearsal practice. So people don't even know what to do. A rehearsal practice is strictly just a visual so everybody can kind of be prepared. They know what's going to happen the next day and just to practice so it seems easier. And that nervousness goes away because, to be honest with you, a lot of wedding party and your attendees, which are your bridesmaids and groomsmen, they get very anxious. They might not act like it, but they do. And sometimes they're not going to remember everything that we have to do. So, like I said, it's a visual. If you're getting married in a church, a lot of times they will have a wedding coordinator, and a lot of times the pastor of the church is really good in orchestrating how the process goes. And sometimes churches don't have wedding coordinators, and if you decide to hire one for your reception, you might have them at your church ceremony as well. And just go over that with the pastor or the coordinator there, like, hey, I have a coordinator also, and we're going to utilize them to church, just so they know ahead of time, because then it can help the flow and it can help them work together as a team. If you're not getting married at church, you're getting married at an outdoor venue or indoor venue or whatever, you need to have somebody there to help with that ceremony, as I'm talking about for rehearsal practice. There needs to be a staging area where everybody can get in line accordingly. And typically that is going to be starting with your grandparents, then it's going to go to the parents, and then it's going to go to the groomsmen, and then the bridesmaid. And then obviously if you're having a ring bearer, flower girl, they would be right next after that. And then the bride and her father or a guardian or whoever is walking her down the aisle. It goes in an order of process. And that's your processional. So, before the ceremony starts, it might be 3:45. The wedding's at 4. You got to get everybody in order. Make sure everybody's buttons are tucked in, their bow ties are straight, their flies are zipped. The girls, they have their flowers, their hair pieces are right. All these things. This sounds so silly, but these are items that you have to double check on. And so do a test and make sure that the wedding coordinator and the bridal party and everybody that's walking down the aisle, that you're queued up with the musician, you're queued up with the mics, you're queued up with what song is going for each thing, because typically, you might have a song for your grandparents, you might have a song for the parents, then a song that the bridal party is going to walk down to. And some people do a song for the groom and groomsmen. Some people have another song for the bride and bridesmaids. And then, of course, the bride's entrance is going to be another song. You have to have that queued up. Well, who's queuing this up if you don't have a coordinator? And when do you know when to walk? This isn't just a guessing game. Somebody needs to be there, like, you can go. Look at the DJ or the musician, next song, because the next movement is about to happen. So ceremony goes into play. Again, is the mic queued up for the officiant? A lot of times you want to have either lapel mic, like you see that I'm wearing right now, or a standalone mic. And that can be a little process in itself, because if it's a windy day, sometimes you can get some background noise. You might not be able to use the mic because the wind is just creating too much of a noise that you can't really hear. So all those things need to be tested out, and the coordinator can work with the musician and the DJ with all that tech support, and we can get that figured out before we're figuring this out during the ceremony, and it's not a good situation. And then again, there's a processional that goes into the ceremony, and there's a recessional that comes out. So we recess out of the ceremony, and there's a flow again. So it's going to be the bride and groom, the people of day of, then the bride, the ring bearer and flower girl, then your bridal party, and then parents of the groom technically go first, and then parents of the bride go first, and then the grandparents end. So what's the flow? Also, as we're talking about the flow of this, sometimes there's some mobility issues. There could be mobility issues with grandparents. There could be mobility issues with parents. You might have somebody in your bridal party that has mobility issues. Does that involve a walker? Does that involve a wheelchair? Does that involve crutches? You know, all these things that can transpire over time from the time you plan your wedding. But how is that planned out? How is the coordinator working with that person? Do we need to have a certain drop off area for a wheelchair? Can they start from a certain location? You know, that all needs to be determined beforehand. So when it's flowing fine. Some grandparents or parents possibly might not be able to walk down the aisle, get to their seat. So how can we get them to their designated seat in the front row ahead of time, effectively? We're not rushing them because a lot of times they need time, make sure they're okay, and get them everything that they need. Something else that sounds so simple, but a lot of ladies like to carry a purse, maybe it has tissues in it or something like that. And instead of them carrying it down the aisle, the coordinator can certainly go ahead of time and place it on their seat before the ceremony. So when they get to their seat to be seated by their usher, that it's already there for them and that they don't have to worry about that. So there's a lot of strategic things, as you can see, going in the day of that somebody needs to be there to do to manage all these details, and a coordinator is certainly the person to be able to do this. Going into day of finishing details, we talked about the ceremony there, but the day of finishing details, it's a hot day outside. Might need some water when your guests arrive in. So is there water out in a nice arranged container? Did somebody put ice on it, or is it sitting there melting in the heat? Hot water, that's not going to serve the purpose. If it's a winter time or it's a cooler time of year, sometimes people like to provide blankets for people to put over their laps. Are they out in a timely manner when your guests arrive that they can grab those? It might be a situation where it's really hot and you allow people to have an umbrella just to shield the heat. You know, are they out ready to go? Fans, are they out ready to go that people can use that? So it's not a last minute thing. Oh my gosh, we forgot the water. There's no ice on it. Who's going to do that? A coordinator already knows that's a detail that has to be taken care of and needs to be done. So before the ceremony, the reception space needs to also be ready to go. There's full service caterers that do a lot, like setting the place settings or lighting candles or doing whatever on the tables. But then there's many caterers that people pick that are not full service like that. So are all the candles on the tables, whatever your tablescape is that complete and ready to go? Have we double checked to make sure there's a fork, a knife, and a spoon at all the tables? There's a plate everywhere. There's a napkin everywhere. There's a glass everywhere. You need to double check. You're not the person that does that. The coordinator is. So somebody light the candles, just like I said, if you're utilizing them. Are there pens at a guest book if somebody needs to sign? I feel like that's one thing I always tell people when we're doing the final touches. And I meet, as a wedding coordinator, I meet with my couples 4 to 5 times before they even come for their wedding day. I do their whole timeline from the time they arrive to the time they leave with an itinerary, and we go over all the details. So what is your guest book? Do you have signage for that? You know, what are you doing? Do you have signage for your cards and gifts? Do you have a card box? What do all these things look like? But I do find that a lot of people have all their stuff and they put it in a container, and I'm ready to set it out. And I feel like one thing that I don't know why, but everybody forgets are those pens for people to sign that guest book or whatever it is that they have. So I always have some on hand, and I'm sure a good wedding coordinator will always have a little bag full of stuff. It's not their menu, but just something to remember. It's the little tiny things. Like I said, a coordinator is going to kind of work with a cake decorator if it's a hot day, like you need to come at this point, or maybe there's a refrigerator on site that they can store, and maybe it's something that the cake has to be set out after dinner, just because of the heat and the temperature. So that's something that needs to be put in the timeline and planned for. Cocktail hour is a time where drinks should start flowing. I don't recommend having alcoholic drinks at a wedding ceremony. I know some people think that that is okay, and that's completely your own opinion. But what I find with that is that people sometimes become inappropriate with that. It's not a time, a ceremony is not a time for talking out of context, giggling out of context, all those things that kind of come with alcohol beverages. Plus, people tend to leave their trash at their seat, and then that's just more cleanup work to do. So I don't recommend that. Alcohol should technically be served if you are going to have that at your wedding, more or less when cocktail hour starts, when the ceremony is over. People transition to cocktail hour, and something that goes into that is if your caterer is not doing the hors d'oeuvres, who's setting them out? Are they all prepared? Are the plates, the napkins, the utensils that people are going to grab these hors d'oeuvres with, are they ready to go? Is the bartender ready to go? Are all the beverages that you're having, whether it be non-alcoholic, alcoholic drinks, when are they iced down? They shouldn't be iced down an hour before all this is taking place. They should be iced down in the morning of your event. They need to be nice and cold, refreshing, and serve the purpose that you're having them for. Flowers, they need to stay in water for the bridesmaids. So, sometimes the bridesmaids go out and get pictures ahead of times. When they come back in, they don't just lay down on a table. They need to go back in water, and they need to have a towel there so they can dab them so they're not getting their dress wet. So again, it seems so much, but it's all these little details that actually do go into play of your day that they need to be ready. Because for photographers, their job is to capture photos of all these special times. It's not to be pinning a boutonniere on, really telling people what to do, steaming a dress, moving this here, that there. That's why you have a coordinator. They are there to video, if you have a videographer, or take photos and capture these wonderful moments. So 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you're looking saying, wow, that was such a fun time. It was so well organized. And just, we want to relive it again because it was so nice. Another thing, your wedding coordinator, a lot of people do what we call first looks. How is that arranged? First looks a lot of times are done with brides and her dad, a bride maybe and her grandfather, a bride maybe and her mom. They might not choose to have their mom get them dressed. Bridesmaids, first look with their bride. Where are we going to do this at? Are we going to do it in the facility they're getting dressed? Do we want to do this outside? There's a lot of coordination, and your coordinator and your photographer and videographer need to work together. And that also needs to be communicated, because if the bride and groom don't want to see each other and we're getting ready at the same location, we need to communicate, guys, you cannot leave this area right now because the bride is outside, vice versa. Bride, we cannot do this because the groom is outside. So we need to talk to all these people and let everybody know you cannot do this until this is completed. We'll let you know. And the coordinator can do all that while the photographer's capturing what you have vision for them to capture. So that's all really important. Grandparents, flower girls, ring bearers, a lot of times I don't have them come till later, kind of closer to the ceremony time, because it can be a long day and they're not necessarily needed for all those pictures. So when a grandparent arrives, who's doing the grandmother's corsage on her wrist or on her dress, which I think we talked about this in the floral industry when I had Christina here, but I wouldn't recommend a corsage on the grandmother's apparel because it's a light texture weight and it falls a lot. So a lot of times I'd go with a wrist corsage. So who's putting that on the grandmother? Who's putting the boutonniere on the grandfather and spending a little bit of time with them to find them a location to sit down? And hopefully that's been gone over for rehearsal practice and they know what time to be there. But if you don't have that, somebody's got to be there to meet them and help them. Flower girls, ring bearers tend to be on the younger age, and that's a long day for them. And a lot of times some kids need a nap before they even get to this point. And certainly they're wearing probably a nice, unique outfit for your special day. And a lot of times it's best to put them in that outfit probably right at an hour before the ceremony. So they're not messing it up and crawling all over the place and jumping around. We know kids, they're kids. They're doing kid things and there's nothing wrong with that. But don't put them in a situation that they most certainly can't handle. So a lot of times just getting them ready, and don't give them a flower basket if it's a flower girl an hour before, because the rose petals are going to be everywhere but in that basket. So a lot of times, for instance, I don't hand it to them till they're about to walk down the aisle. And they know we've already talked about what they need to do. But if not, you're going to be picking rose petals up about 50 times. So, that's not something you want the bridesmaids to have to worry about. You worry about, your mom worry about, your grandmother worry. We don't have time for that stuff. You're getting in line and getting order for this wonderful ceremony. Photos typically happen with family and extended family and the bridal party after a ceremony. That needs to be in an orderly fashion. So I would suggest you kind of have an idea of what you want. You put them on a paper, you share those with your coordinator and your photographer. And after the ceremony, the coordinator can be calling people out. So and so, you're on deck. So and so, you're right after this picture. So it's in and out. It makes things seamless for the photographer, less stressful on them, and they're not trying to herd cats. Because I'm going to tell you, that is the hardest part about photography are the pictures right after the ceremony with the grandparents, the family members, the little kids, the extended family. It's sometimes the bigger the family are, bigger a person's family are, it is much more of a nightmare. So if you can have that ordered and the coordinator can go all these things with the photographer and help, it's going to make the photographer's job so much easier, and you're going to get things through these pictures a lot quicker. You only want to limit that to an hour. You certainly don't want to make guests wait for cocktail hour and it be 2 hours before you even get to the reception site and start the dinner and do all those things. So take that in consideration. And a coordinator is going to keep you on time. You're going to start the ceremony on time. The pictures after are going to be on time, and the reception is going to start on time with that itinerary that you have for your special day. Following those pictures, start your reception. You might have bridal party entrances. You might not want that. You might just want you, the bride and groom, or the bride and the bride, or the groom and the groom, whatever it is, to enter. And then you might want to go right into your order of events. Are you dancing your first dance and your mother son dance, your father daughter dance? Do you have any other special dances? Every once in a while I had a bride just recently, and it was so sweet. She danced with her grandfather, and he was a special part of her life, but that was another event that came into play as we started that reception. Some people want to dance with their dad and their mom, some brides. So all these different things come into play, and that's what makes your event unique. But those things need to be discussed and ordered so that the coordinator and your musician, your DJ, your master of ceremonies can have all those designated in a timely fashion and in the order that you're planning for. You need to know if you're going to have a blessing, you need to already communicate it. Who is doing that blessing? Not like, hey, Uncle Jim, by the way, you're doing the blessing today. And then the DJ calls up, and now Uncle Jim is going to do the blessing. And Uncle Jim's sitting back there like, what? I'm doing the blessing? What are you talking about? That needs to be discussed. The coordinator needs to have already met Uncle Jim so we know who's doing this blessing. And then your toast and your cake cutting. I like to give my maid of honor, my best man, parents, family members, whoever's doing a toast, they've doesn't. I like to give them a 15-minute heads up. To be honest with you, those people get anxious. And they're like, this toast is killing me. I have it all prepared. I have it written out, but Lettie, when is this going to happen? Just calm down. And I give them a 15-minute warning so they can get their act together. They know and they're prepared. Cake cuttings, you need to have that set up with your photographer and your DJ and all that. And a trend that's happening now is a lot of people don't want to announce cake cutting, and that's completely fine. But the coordinators needs to go to the photographer and say, hey, look, they're going to do their private cake cutting. Let's get over here to the location so they can do this. You can do it privately. You can do it announced where everybody's there watching you. It doesn't make it right or wrong. Just need to let your coordinator know and have that planned out how you're going to simulate that. Some people, it's more on a trend now that I think a lot of people don't do garter or bouquet tosses. But again, that's up to you. But again, that's one more thing that has to be coordinated out. When are we going to do that? I think that's a later evening thing. I think if people, once they get the juices flowing a little bit, are more apt to going out onto the dance floor and catching that bouquet and maybe doing that little garter. If you do that earlier in the day, you might not get the participation you might get if you have the juices flowing. So again, if you choose to do that, let's just know the coordination and the time frame and your itinerary so the coordinator and the DJ or musician or band, whatever, can coordinate, hey, we're 5 minutes out from doing our tosses. Where is the toss bouquet? Does the bride have the garter on, or do we need to get all that taken care of so we're ready to go when it's time to do it? And a lot of people in today's times like to do exits. That could be sparkler send off. Some venues don't allow that just because of the fire. I do know with that comes coordination and management of people. You need to give them strict instructions. You need to make sure that they're not right up on the bride and groom so they don't get burnt, that they're not standing near a building that can catch fire. There's water close by, all these things. But that needs, as a coordinator, that needs to be by detail explain to all your guests and make sure that they're paying attention to how this is going to operate. Makes it flow of that much easier for the photographer because bride and grooms are running up and back in these sparklers and the photographer's trying to capture this awesome visual and something for later in life. And if we got sparklers going at their face, how can a photographer? We're worried about people being burned. So with that comes organization and management of people. People don't always listen. So you have to be very firm and authoritative, and that's what a coordinator is there to do. And it doesn't have to be sparklers. It might be confetti. It might be whatever you decide to use, and also whatever your venue allows, because some things at some venues aren't allowed. You know, I certainly don't want confetti laying all over my ground. So is it biodegradable? Can you hose it down with water and it disappears? All those things. So you need to ask those things, and you need to also explain to your coordinator how you want that to roll. Again, there's a lot of things that I covered today about a coordinator, but I think after everything I've just shared, you should understand why a coordinator is a valuable person in your event or your wedding. A lot of times coordinator is going to be used more so for a wedding more than an event. But the bigger an event is, there are going to be timelines. So you might want a coordinator for that. But for a wedding, as the day flows from the start to getting ready to the prep, to the photographer arriving, to having all your details, getting ready for the ceremony in that staging process, walking through the ceremony, having the ceremony, recessing out of the ceremony, pictures to in your reception, to how the reception flows from your blessing to your dinner, to your dances, to your cake cutting, to your toast, to your exit, to any other special things or great ideas that you might have for that reception. How does that all coordinate with your time to the end of the night? And also working with the caterer, making sure the time frame from when your meal is served, working with the bartender, making sure everything's flowing, and any other outside things that you've used vendor wise that the coordinator can work with to make sure that everything flows for your vision and for your special day just perfect. You need a wedding coordinator. And again, they're going to range, and all those things I put together today and explained to you, that's going to be on a higher scale price. A low end one would just do your ceremony and that's it. And then they're going to leave. That's on the $700 scale. From start to finish, all the ins and outs, even helping you get your dress on, the little minute details, reminding people go to the bathroom before they get lined up. Like I said earlier, checking the fly, checking the buttons, all those things, seamless, stress-free. You're on the end of $2,500 to $10,000. But let me tell you, it is well worth every penny that you spend if you get a top-notch and top-level coordinator that's going to take all that worry, stress, and everything away. So I hope you enjoyed it today. It was a lot of information. That's why I said you might want to have those earbuds in just so you can get other things done while you can just listen and learn. But I'll be back, and I'll be back soon with a photographer, and we are going to talk more into detail of things I talked about today and how a wedding coordinator helps a photographer and all the things that they need to help your special day and capture your special day. So years later, you can relive that special moment and smile and be happy and laugh about all those special times about your event or your marriage. Take it easy, stay cool. It's hot out there today, and we're in dead summer. So see you soon and have a good one.